the dying embers of human existence, as the asteroid, a behemoth the size of Texas, hurtles relentlessly toward Earth, the world braces for an apocalyptic end. Deep beneath the bunker, a refuge plunges into the bowels of the earth. Here the chosen gather, their purpose clear, to preserve the very soul of our civilization. The 35 and 70 millimeter prints that encapsulate the magic, the emotion, and the dreams of generations past. These masterpieces, each frame a testament to the human spirit, are carefully cataloged and cradled in the cavernous confines of the bunker. Perhaps there was room for more, for friends and family yearning for salvation, but sacrifices must be made. The movie nerds stand united, the keepers of a flame, promising a future where the art of storytelling endures, transcending the boundaries of time and space. God help us all.
Welcome to Rate Frame the Two Back, part of the Western Media Podcast Network. Join us as we watch and discuss films on VOD and streaming platforms, deliberating on whether each one is worthy of salvation or destined for destruction in the face of the impending asteroid apocalypse. I'm Nathan Shore, and accompanying me are the extraordinary movie mavens Brianna Butterworth, Sam Cole, and our very special guest. Joining us is Dave Merrill, who is not just an incredibly talented person working in the film industry, but also my great friend for almost 25 years. Welcome to the show, David.
Nathan, how the hell are you?
It should be Nathan, right?
It should be Nathan. Go for Nathan. It should be. Yeah.
To begin the episode, I've sort of made this a tradition. I'd like to ask my co-host a question. If one were to listen to an episode of Rate Frame the Two Back backwards, what subliminal or hidden message would they hear, and who would be the voice speaking?
I think the subliminal message the voice speaking would be Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. And the whole point of the show is to secretly enlist us as a sidekick of his to help him fight the bad guys and ghosts in the Chinese underworld. That's what I think.
That might be a perfect answer, Sam.
Yeah, what Sam said. That's my answer.
I love it. I think there should have been a cable series based off of that character. just because you just love. I mean, Jack Burton. That's who. You know, when Kurt Russell goes into that character, he's Jack Burton. That's who. It's like, oh shit, I know who this guy is.
I have a perpetual smile on my face when I watch that movie, like all the way through.
So
I'm just like,
fun.
This is just great.
It's great.
That movie's so fun. It's one of my favorite Kurt Russell movies.
Oh, man.
Awesome.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we have a special guest here, Dave Merrill. Welcome to our humble podcast. You, as I mentioned before, we've known each other for a long time, longer than we probably want to admit. It will probably reveal a little too much about how old we are if we talk about it too much. But we go back to days of working in the Hollywood system back then. And first, though, I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell our audience who are you? What do you do? What's your bread and butter?
Well, that's the question, that was, on the minds of like my parents for a long damn time, and many a friend and many a girlfriend. I don't know. Let me think. I mean, I guess if I take people quickly through the thing, and we talked about this before, I found myself in Hollywood back in the early 2000s, along with Nathan, and I had in college, I had worked in short-term risk management, or actually what that means is I actually worked in the casino industry. This is true. It sounds like a joke, but truthfully, I was a blackjack and craps dealer in the casinos in this little town in Mississippi called Tunica, which is about an hour south of Memphis. But then, sometime in the early 2000s, I found myself living and working in LA. And I first went to work for a film producer, still in the business, a gentleman by the name of Etchy Stroh, very successful film producer, Moonstone Entertainment. And I worked for him for a couple of years. And then I found my way over to a slightly larger company and network, Universal NBC. Worked at Universal NBC for a while, but I kept getting these executive office jobs that didn't have any film production experience. And I was really frustrated by this because I didn't go to film school, but I desperately wanted to work on film sets. And I went back to Etchy, who'd become a mentor for me at that time. And I was like, what do I do? And Etchy has an accent that's a little bit like Henry Kissinger, if you know who that is. And so because he's this Israeli guy, and he was like, well, David, what you got to do, you got to get on-set experience. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do, but if you don't get the on-set experience, then you're forever going to be seen as like this, creative non-entity, just like the office guy. You don't want to do that. So, which I realize now it's really bad. It probably sounds like, like Arnold Schwarzenegger's grandfather. But so then I really started like looking around and I was working in recruitment at Universal in corporate HR, and a production job on the staff of the show that Nathan and I worked on. Can I mention it by name?
Please do. I've mentioned it before.
The public needs to know we both worked on Fear Factor. I would add another a superlative for that, but this is for the kids, so I won't say it. But because it would be effing Fear Factor. But so it came up in a meeting, and somebody's like, well, do we have somebody who's going to interview? I was like, yeah, me. And they looked at me like, what? I'm like, no, I want to go over there. I want to talk to the producer. I want to try for this position. They're like, why would you? I'm like, because I want on-set experience, And I went over there and I talked to, what was it? Matt Hurwitz. And I'm trying to think of the other guy's name that we worked with.
Well, I remember the name of the second AD, who I'll never forget.
Oh yeah, how could you forget? Yeah,
we won't drop his name because you never know who you're going to work for again.
Yeah, you never know. You do never know. Although I would say that our first AD was a pretty damn good. He was a pretty good guy. Yeah. He was pretty cool, and he actually wound up later on in another incarnation of my career. He wound up helping me out with some stuff, with some commercial projects that I worked on. But yeah, so we both worked at effing Fear Factor, on NBC for several seasons. And
well, I did one. I thought we were both on there just for the second season.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah. I don't know. My mind is a little fuzzy, because like all the snakes and worms that we had to eat, it probably jangled my neurons up or something.
Yep.
Incidentally, they were always trying to get us, like the crew, to test out the food stunts.
Do anything. None of the cool stuff, just the food stunts.
Yeah, the food stunts. I think that I had Perry Bart talked into one time I nearly talked him into letting me do one of the car stunts. But at the last minute, it got taken away from me.
All I know is that I was helping out, doing the wash down of like smushed Madagascar hissing cockroaches. And a lot of
I remember that episode. A lot of
regurgitated worms.
Right.
A lot of regurgitated worms.
Because my thing was like when the Madagascar hissing cockroaches first showed up for delivery, it was a security guy that came and found me because none of the producers there, but I was there a little early. This really cute girl comes hopping up. She's got this nice cute little cooler, and she's like, "I've got a delivery for the producers," and I was like, "Okay, well, I'll sign for it. Would you like to see what they are?" I'm like, okay. So she opens it up, and there's this bucket of this Playmate cooler just writhing with these. And I'm like, okay, close it, please, close that. And then she's like, oh, they're perfectly clean. I'm like, lady, I don't care if they've got tuxedo and tails. Close that damn lid. And anyway, yeah, that was my memory of the Madagascar hissing cockroaches.
But please tell us a little bit more. I mean, our podcast knows all about my Fear Factor days, but tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now.
Well, okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm working on several projects, as most producers are, but sincerely, what probably something. This is something that came to me that I'm really excited about, and I really feel like it's got a lot of potential to really to do a lot and to help a lot of people. An older friend of mine who is a visual artist from Memphis, but he lives in Europe now, came to me summer before last, and he said he's African American, and he says, I want to do this project centered around the untold story of African American inventors and technologists at the turn of the century. We're talking about men and women that were like, they were recently freed slaves, or the children were recently freed slaves, and he'd got these books written by this gentleman, Henry Baker, who was like one of the first African-American patent clerks in Washington, D.C., that documented over 800 of these inventions, which formed the underpinnings of the Industrial Revolution. And I was like, so he starts telling me that. And he says, well, what I'm going to do is I've got all these artist friends and I'm going to have them create original works of art. And so we have this like museum exhibit that will have the technology and the invention and the bio, but then the original work of art or the design based by that original technology or design. And I was like, my God, that's fantastic. But you have to have an AV component. And he's like, what do you mean an AV component? And I was like, well, you need an introductory film, or you need little films and bios or interviews. And then immediately he comes back with, well, can you do that? And I was like, well, not all of it, no. So, we started talking about developing it as maybe like an anthology series where we would do something for a streaming platform, and every week or every month there would be interviews with writers and artists or designers, and they would talk about this, and there would be either something like animation or even recreation of some of these key moments in these people. And this summer I was at the Nantucket Film Festival and had the occasion to meet there's a very well regarded documentary filmmaker by the name of Joe Brewer. Nikki Giovanni Project is this film that's currently out on HBO. So he is this really, we met at like this, there was a producer, screenwriter party, and we were talking about stuff, and he's like, what are you working on? I mentioned this project, and he really just it caught his attention. He was like, that's great. And I said, but look, what would you think what would you think if there was a series, an anthology? And he's like, well, he goes, I think you've answered your own question. I think it's a great idea. But then I was like, okay, well, but would you as a writer producer, would you participate? Like if and he goes, well, why wouldn't I? Why would I not do this? So there's I think it's like the figure something, it's over 800 of these stories. So, there's like, this is a huge opportunity to tell this largely untold part of, American history, African American history, but history. And so we're kind of, we're honing in on, we've got a nonprofit formed, and we're honing in on getting the funding for the exhibit. And then we started talking to like young filmmakers, filmmaking students about participating, in creating the first iteration of the AV part of that platform. The other, I'm working on a couple things that, it's like Nathan and I both are frustrated writers. So I know he's laughing, but it's like we both, like you're always working on. So there's two cable show or streaming show ideas that I had. One of them is based off of my parents' experience living in Memphis. The basic pitch for this is that it's Memphis 18 months prior to the Martin Luther King assassination. Mm. And so just to put this into personal context, and it's not entirely based on my parents, but my dad, who was married to my mother, who was an Asian woman at the time, was a young, fresh out of the Army rookie cop in 1968, the year that Dr. King was killed. And my mom was this, not exactly fresh off the boat, but immigrated from the Philippines, woman living in the South at that time. So it was kind of precarious. Mm-hmm. But Memphians of a certain age, a lot of them have memories of that time. So there's this idea that, that you would meet these characters that were, sanitation workers or people working for the mayor's office, people working in the police department. And then we track forward in their lives through those turbulent months. But on April 4th, the day of the assassination, boom, you know where everybody is and you know who they are. And I pitched this to a woman at HBO at a film event, summer before last. And then she just looked at me. She said, well, what happens after that? And I said, you greenlight season 2. And then we kind of move forward. The other one that's also been really, frankly, it's something that's like driving me crazy, is I had this idea about a series that would be sort of like a form of the X-Files, but taking it back to the early 1900s, and it would be in the years, the couple of years leading up to the outbreak of World War I in Europe. And the protagonist is an African-American priest who's been assigned to the office that does exorcist investigation, paranormal investigation with the Vatican, but it's centered around Europe. And so, so it has this there's a little bit of a, of a racial component, because he's African-American, but he's traveling through Europe and he's investigating, all sorts of signs and wonders and strange things. And then there's a conspiracy involved. And then it's tracking towards, the outbreak of World War I. And anyway, I see
You had me at X-Files around the aughts. I was just like, yep, awesome. Green light.
Well, thank you. There was a lot of strange stuff. And I would say that, you start peeling back these layers. Like if you look into the roots of the, I don't know if I can say this on a pod, the National Socialist German Workers' Party.
Yeah. There
was an occult society, the Thule or Tula Society, that was in operation in Germany at that time. There was Aleister Crowley in England. Mm-hmm. There were certainly diabolists that is to say devil worshippers in all throughout Europe. So there was a lot of as much as I thought I was inventing this world of strange fiction, I started delving into the research, and you find out, no, there was a really lot of, the Dan Brown stuff is really, it's good, but it doesn't even really touch the surface of some of the strangeness that was happening in Europe at that time. And so I had this idea that this priest, who is really gifted and from America, he travels to Europe, and suddenly he's a little bit of a fish out of water, and he finds himself, involved in, a lot of strange things, everything from demonic possessions and, hauntings to conspiracy, on a global level of, cultists and occultists. So that's the other series idea that I'm trying to work on.
Well, those are some awesome ideas, David. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I think we should get to our movie review this week, though, and maybe later on you can please give us some information about where we can find you and any links or any other further plugs that you have at the end of the show. That'd be wonderful. Okay, so if you hadn't guessed already by some of our teases up front, we are discussing the Christopher Nolan film Memento. I believe it was released in 2000. Released wide in 2001. I think, David, we haven't mentioned this, but we saw this in the theater.
We did.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Together. I think one of the first movies I think we saw together. It was shortly after we left Fear Factor, I think.
Right.
But I have a plot synopsis somewhere buried here on my desktop. Here it is. I'll share this here first. So we have Leonard, played by Guy Pearce, is tracking down the man who raped and murdered his wife. The difficulty, however, of locating his wife's killer is compounded by the fact that he suffers from a rare, untreatable form of memory loss. Although he can recall details of life before the accident, Leonard cannot remember what happened 15 minutes ago, where he's going, or why. And yes, I do have a plot synopsis for your children, which I really enjoy doing now. David, I started doing this thing where I insert into ChatGTP, write me a plot synopsis if you are a 6-year-old, and it comes out hysterically all the time.
I would imagine.
Yeah. Once upon a time, there was a man named Leonard who wanted to catch the bad guy who did something really mean to his wife. But here's the funny part. Leonard's brain is like a goldfish's memory. He can remember things from long ago, but anything recent, poof, it's gone. So every 15 minutes, he forgets what he's doing or where he's going. Imagine trying to catch a sneaky bad guy when you keep forgetting what you're doing. That's Leonard's wacky adventure. Exactly how that pitch meeting went.
That really captured the tone.
It doesn't it though? It just needs, like an 80s soundtrack, like a sitcom soundtrack, and you're fine. Yeah.
And I'll just
on like Pee Wee Herman show. Like just
And I have a few, like 30 or 40 seconds from the trailer. Here we go.
Is it a good trailer?
I have this condition.
The condition?
It's my memory.
Amnesia.
No. It's different from that. What? Since my injury, I can't make new memories. Everything fades. If we talk for too long, I'll forget how we started. Next time I see you, I'm not going to remember this conversation.
What's the last thing that you do remember?
My wife.
That's sweet.
Dying.
Lenny!
I guess I've already told you about my condition.
Oh, well, only every time I see you.
You don't remember where you've been or what you've just done.
No, I can't make new memories. It's like waking. It's like you just woke up.
When you find this guy, what are you gonna do?
I'm gonna kill him.
Maybe I can help you find him. Are you sure you want this?
My wife deserves vengeance.
Do not trust her. She's going to use you to protect herself.
All right. So
That was a good trailer.
it was good. There's a few
Yeah.
floating around on YouTube, and I had to make an executive decision there. I felt like I couldn't find the right one that may have been the original trailer. There's a lot. That's the funny thing about YouTube now. There's so many remixes in trailers that are made for like a modern audience that it's very difficult to find sometimes an original trailer of a movie that's like 20 years
Mhm.
old. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sam, do you have some movie facts for us?
Yes, indeed, I do have some movie facts, and away we go. Heidi ho, neighbor. So this is Memento is a 2000 American neo-noir mystery psychological thriller, and it's actually based on a short story called Memento, might be pronouncing this wrong, Memento Mori, that his brother Jonathan Nolan actually wrote, and this was later published in 2001. Famously now, the story goes that brothers Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan were on a cross-country drive from Chicago to Los Angeles. And Jonathan pitched the idea that he had to his brother Chris. Chris loved it. And when he got to Los Angeles and Jonathan went back to Chicago or somewhere else, Chris begged him for the first draft of the screenplay, which he took a while to deliver. But when he finally gave it to him, Christopher Nolan was very impressed and continued working with it. And it was actually in July of 1997, Christopher Nolan's girlfriend and later on wife, Emma Thomas, who also produced Following, which we saw last. She actually showed his screenplay to an individual named Aaron Ryder, who was an executive for New Market Films. And to quote Aaron Ryder, direct quote, he said, "Perhaps the most innovative script I've ever seen." Soon after, it was optioned by New Market and given a budget of $4.5 million, which is just a new director's dream to have that. It's like a magical story right there. Pre-production lasts about 7 weeks, during which the main shooting locations, they were actually going to shoot in Montreal and then in Quebec, and then they moved to Los Angeles, California to create a more realistic and noirish atmosphere for the film, which totally makes sense. Casting-wise, Brad Pitt was initially slated to play Leonard, which would have been totally different, but I don't think he would have been bad, but he was interested in the part, but he passed due to scheduling conflicts. And so there were other actors considered, like, Charlie Sheen, Alec Baldwin, Aaron Eckhart, who would actually later work with Nolan on The Dark Knight. But the role went to Guy Pearce, not only because it impressed Nolan the most, but after Pitt passed, the studio decided to not go with A-list actors and try to find someone who was more affordable to keep the budget down. So I think, Guy Pearce was really meant to be in the movie. Other than that, this film stars 70% of the cast of The Matrix, Carrie Ann Moss, and Joey Pantoliano, who I much prefer to call Joey Pants.
Joey Pants.
Joey Pants.
The best Goonies villain ever. And let's see. And this film was profitable. I believe it cost between $5 and $9 million. It made $25 million in the US, but $40 million worldwide. So this was a success.
Mm-hmm.
I really think, Following was a great start, but clearly this was a real springboard for Nolan's career because, one, it was positively reviewed by a lot of critics, but two, more importantly, sadly, in the business side of it, this was a successful film. So This is really the beginning of Nolan's adventure. And as Nolan loves to play with time and narrative, this is the ultimate playing with time film of his, especially since it's based on a real medical condition. So very, very auspicious Nolan start. If you guys want to add anything, that's basically the gist.
Two things. You mentioned that Brad Pitt was originally thought to be the character of Leonard in this. I happened to go off on a tangent. I was thinking, well, what was Brad Pitt doing? He was doing so much in like 2000, 2001. He was doing Snatch, The Mexican Spy Game, and Ocean's 11. And
He was
like a
busy.
1 year period.
Yeah.
He was busy. I'm not surprised he did not have time. Yeah, there's a few things I just want to throw onto that. I think this got its official release on March 16th, 2001.
It did. It came out in March 2001, but first it premiered, I think, at the Venice Film Festival in 2000. So Festival 2000, but wide release 2001.
I like to also see what else came out on that day, because what were your other options? Also coming out on that day was Exit Wounds, starring Steven Seagal and DMX. Were you there? Anyone else see that?
I was not there. I do remember that though.
And Enemy at the Gates with Jude Law and Joseph Fiennes. Those were 1 and 2 at the box office. Number 3 at the box office was See Spot Run.
What?
Number 4 was Hannibal, which I
that's right. Yeah,
did
Hannibal.
see that. Yeah, Hannibal.
I think David, we may have seen that.
I think we saw that too.
I think we saw Hannibal.
Yeah, I think we saw it.
Number 5 was Down to Earth. Number 6 was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Saw that.
That was in the theater for a long time.
B's favorite movie.
Oh,
Number
yeah.
7
Great
was
film.
Traffic. Number 8 was Chocolat.
I think I confuse Exit Wounds with Glimmer Man, but the two different.
It could be the same movie. Number 9 was Get Over It, which I don't know what that is. And number 10 was Recess, School's Out.
Oh.
It was a weird week.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. But yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Before the summer blockbuster. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to mention we just want to mention a few of the awards before we get into our thoughts. And this did get nominated for 2 Academy Awards, Best Original Screenplay and Best Film Editing. Did not win either. Gosford Park won Best Original Screenplay that year, and Black Hawk Down won Best Film Editing. So I mean,
ooh.
Yeah. Okay.
But it
In
did
retrospect, I mean, come on.
It did
I can
well.
see that though. I mean, Black Hawk Down was unbelievably impressive in terms of just the battle sequences and the cutting, and it was
I've never revisited it. I remember seeing it.
Aren't we so bored of battle sequences?
I personally, I thought it was the best one since it was shortly after Saving Private Ryan. It was different, but I mean, Ridley Scott did that right after Gladiator, and I was just wow, this there was no promotion for it. It just came out of nowhere, and it was wait a minute.
I remember it just being an exhausting war film where it just did not. It was relentless.
I also feel like there was just you couldn't escape that kind of movie at that time. Isn't this around the Jarhead era, Pearl Harbor era? Isn't this all coming?
Jarhead was 2005, I think.
That's the same few years though. We just couldn't escape this
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was still 5 years later, but I loved the relentlessness of Black Hawk Down. I felt shell shocked, but and I'd never seen a movie like that before. So that particular one, just my opinion, I was impressed by. But I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get to our thoughts on this. I forgot to do our little random number generator before. We could do this on the fly, or just how about David? You who do you want to go first here? You could throw us under the bus.
No, I don't want it to be me.
You don't want to. You don't want to.
I don't want it to be me. I want it to be you. Look, I listened to somebody. I was telling him before. I listened to some of your podcasts, and you guys are.
Right, we're just gonna do this on the fly right now, real professional style. Sam, pick a number.
12.
12. B.
20.
20. I'll go with 1. And it is 20.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man. I thought I was doing something slick there.
So if you pick 20 and I pick 12, that's 2012. A Roland
Hey. Hey.
So go B, Sam, me, Dave. All right. B, tell us about Memento.
Okay, so first thing to get out of the way for me with Memento, am I the only one who had never seen this movie before?
Only one on the planet, probably, yeah.
On the planet,
that's not true. That's not true.
I mean, maybe.
This is a relatively, small film, so no, a lot of people have not.
I feel like I had been living under a rock, and by the time I was finally I've been so excited to watch it all week, and somehow I managed to go my entire life with no Memento spoilers. So I was thrilled about that. I thought this was great. You know, sometimes you see movies that have sort of like culturally in the canon become really hyped up and then they don't quite live up to your expectations. But once in a while you see one where you're like, oh yeah, I get it. This is a classic for a reason. And I totally felt that way with Memento. You know, I think I sort of clocked into Nolan's career and trying to watch his movies as they come out later in his career. And so I've had a lot of problems with his writing. I tend to fall in like the Nolan critic camp. I don't think he writes women characters very well.
Hey, where did you come in with Nolan?
Well, I did see The Prestige, but I don't think I like realized it was him. It was probably the Dark Knight series.
Okay.
It's probably like the Batman stuff that I came in. And so I really understood all the criticism when people were saying like his characters seem a little bit cold and he seems a little bit more focused on production than character stuff. And that really rang true to me, especially as I didn't see people like me very well developed in his films. But, you know, then we watched Memento and I was like, oh, this is great. This is some of his best character writing that I've seen. I thought everyone in this movie was bringing their A game. Guy Pearce was like, he knocked me out of the park with this. I thought he was perfect casting. You brought up all the other potential actors. I don't think they could have done it as well as he did it. And same for Carrie-Anne Moss. I just loved her character. And it made me think, I was really glad that I saw Following before we saw this, because there was so much of Following in this movie, you know? And I talked about in the pod last time about Nolan talking about he wanted his movies to have like Easter eggs if you watch them again. He wanted them to read differently if you watch them a second time. And you really get that in the relationship with Carrie-Anne Moss's character and Leonard. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought the movie, I liked the structure of the movie. You know, an issue I had with Following was that it sort of got fuck you with the time for the sake of it, but I really liked it structured in like, this is about memory or this is about a dream. So I thought it having a purpose that it hinged on just made it more salient for me. And I like I like that the central arc of the story, this mystery that you're trying to figure out, doesn't really matter in the end. I really like that you get to the end and it's not about who killed his wife and it's not about if he solves the murder. It's about himself and it's about his own moral compass and the lies we tell ourselves and the uneasiness that we live with. And I think that's something that, like, having gone back and watched this, now I see that through line in his male characters going forward in his career. So
yeah. What's your rating be?
I gave this one a 4. 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Great. Sam.
So I enjoyed this movie. I'm of two minds on this movie. There's two sides of me that will sort of merge into one review. The like histrionic critical side acknowledges that this movie is a technical masterpiece with a very original storytelling. And for that, it's definitely going to get high marks because it is innovative. I can't quite think of another movie like it. And so I have to acknowledge that this is a quality film. For me as a viewer, I am an emotional audience member that when I respond to things emotionally for characters. And for me, there is an element of tedium watching this film of I really appreciate the structure and I really appreciate what's going on. But the back and forth, which brilliantly mimics the actual condition that he has, for me, it counteractively works against my brain where I'm going, wait, but I want, no, just hold. Okay, backwards, back and forwards. And so that being said, however, at the beginning, I thought, okay, I got to get through this. But to be fair, as the movie progressed, I love and am grateful for the kind of dark humor that's in it. That Nolan does a great job. And my favorite line in the movie is when Guy Pearce is voicing over and he goes, okay, so what am I doing? I'm chasing this guy. Nope, chasing me. And I love it when the guy at the hotel, rips him off in the 2 rooms. And I love it and thought it was really scary that Carrie-Anne Moss was just like really messing with him and was like evil. I was like, wow, like that scared me when she gets in the car. Yeah. He's looking at her out the window and you see her face and she's like, I got you. I was like, oh my God, like it actually made me nervous. So overall, this movie, like I I only saw it once, and back in like 2001. Actually, I didn't see it in the theater, but I think we saw it it came out on DVD or in film school or something like that. I saw it again this time. I would definitely watch it again because I think the clockwork nature is really good, and unlike Tenet, which I think is kind of like showcase like circus. There's an actual point to this. So even though I don't have the best, like, even though this is not a movie I would go to myself if I'm like, I want to be entertained tonight, what should I watch? I acknowledge that this is a good movie. So for me, I would give it 3.5 stars, even though I find the experience of watching it frustrating, but that just says more about me. But usually I just go with my gut, but I have to step outside of myself for this review because it is a quality film. The acting is good. I do have to acknowledge that. If I just said how I felt, I think
the acting's so good.
Deserves better than that. So I'd give it 3.5. Yeah.
Sam, do you think if you watched a linear edit, like how I did for Following, you would like connect with it more, or do you think it would be even more tedious?
No, I think a linear edit would help, but then I would want to go back and see the
production.
And it's not tedious in the sense of like, oh, this is horrible. It wasn't like that. It's just, for me, it's like I watching it is like, I have to like work at it. I'm not like swept away into the story. I'm like, okay, so he thought he was drunk, but then he went back to the bathroom because he went to the bathroom before. Okay. And it did help me beforehand that all the color sequences go backwards and the black and white goes forward. And that actually helped me. Of course, you can just watch the movie. You don't have to research it before. It's well enough made that you'll be able to follow it. It's very clever. That's just my emotional response as a viewer. But high marks nonetheless. It's a good movie. Like it's basically the blood brother to Following. It's Following on steroids.
Yeah, it's what you wanted Following to be. Yeah.
And you can tell, I mean, the difference with the $9 million budget, you can hear the sound design and it really is. It's like if Following was like Rubber Soul, then Memento is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. You know, I mean, it's
I like perfect analogy.
I'm hearing you say, Sam, this is a good movie. This is not a good movie, Sam. This is a great movie. I love this so much. I've always loved this movie. I'm in awe of this film. I've seen this maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 times in my life. And every time I do, I'm constantly gobstopped of the genius that it took to conceptualize this film. There are actually spreadsheets, diagrams, graphs online from the Nolans where they visualize. There's a visual representation of the story. It's a deep rabbit hole, and I would probably need a degree in astrophysics or something to understand it all. And I can't comprehend it all. We've talked about this on recent episodes, how I love movies where we're guided by unreliable narrators and playing multiple timelines. And we all know my strong affection for film noir. So yeah, this movie is catnip for me. I've never experienced a movie before or since that so effectively puts the audience in the shoes of a character. Yeah. Nolan just destabilizes us by physically putting us inside Lenny's headspace. And he does this through the medium of cinema and through the editing of the story to make us actually feel the suffering of his condition. And I can't think of another movie that employs a technique this effectively to put us in the character's shoes. And I also think that this movie is just a chilling study of grief. And we'll get more into that in our discussion, I'm sure. I'm not going to say much more about this because I really want to get into a group discussion on this, but this is a 5-star movie for me all the way. This is in my all-time pantheon. So I'm going to leave it at that and pass it to David.
Wow. Okay. So the interesting thing about your comments is that I think you actually pushed me from I was kind of somewhere in the well, is it a 4? Is it a 4.5 or is it a 5? I think you've actually pushed me towards thinking too that it is probably a 5. And my hesitation in previous years about the 4 to 5. It's like, well, and it's some of these like little indefinable things like B's comment earlier about but the characters come across at first as is like are any of them, do you feel like they have good arcs, or are they likable or whatever? And then my first inclination was like, well, he's an English director, so maybe there's that, because British, but that's kind of unfair. And also we've had a couple of decades, of Nolan films, Tenet, and I just lost the name of The Prestige, of seeing films like that, and realizing that no, he is, or he and his brother are capable of writing characters that, that do have, arcs, and they have good internal emotional lives. They're not, and the stories take place, as Nathan was saying, it's like, not only are they two-dimensional, but maybe they're even fourth dimensional, because it's kind of odd. You go back and revisit them. And like I went and revisited this when Nathan first contacted me, because it had been years since I last saw it. I have seen the film probably half a dozen times, but it was one of those, like, no pun intended, but it was like, do I remember this film properly? Or is my memory playing tricks on me that I think that I remember? But the thing that I thought rang true first when I rewatched it was like, no, I did remember that in the first sequence, the first shot is you're seeing a Polaroid not or go out of focus, it doesn't come into focus, so it was like, do I remember that? I was like, but that's not the way that works. And then I was thinking about other films, that, that sort of follow Gaspar Noé's Irreversible from 2002, which Nathan, did we see that together?
I have seen it.
Okay.
Been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a crazy movie.
That's a crazy movie. It's a beautiful movie. Well shot. Yep. Well, I should say well shot film, but because of the middle part, and is it okay to do a little bit of a spoiler or? Yeah. Okay. Well, so there is, I'll just frame it. I just put it this way. There's a horrible attack on Monica Bellucci's character in the middle of this film.
Yeah.
And it is enough that, and I don't say this about many films, but there's a few films that I've seen them once and I'll be like, that was a fantastic film. I will never see that again, or I have no need to see that ever again. Yeah. But the making of the film itself, in Irreversible, it is, much like everything occurs in reverse. Like the plot and everything also happens in reverse. So it's got that similarity to it, which is hard to do, but very well done. The other film noir aspects of it, like the Carrie-Anne Moss character, the Natalie character is, I just kept flashing to thinking about Barbara Stanwyck's character on Double Indemnity.
Yes.
Because it's like, here she's pushed people towards, murder. A couple of times, but at first it's like, the character comes across as this innocuous kind of like, oh, well, is this person, really capable? But then you find out, yes, they are. They really are capable of pushing people towards murder. And then the do we want to do are we talking about the comparisons or the art house double bill?
Oh, we'll get there.
Yeah, or is that, we'll get there? Okay. Well, okay, but let's see. But the other film that I had to compare it to, which is okay, now I've just spoiled my spoiler or whatever. But Alan Parker's Angel Heart, because on so many levels, you've got this unreliable narrator who is, who is a detective, and there's also this motif of, the uncertainty of his identity, and he's always, and it's always this thing of creeping up on his reflection, and then at one point there's even a scene where he for some reason, you don't really know, but he looks into a mirror and he smashes it. And, and as we know, from this film, that's what happens to Leonard, is that his head gets smashed against a mirror, and it fractures his identity. He's no longer the Leonard that, we believed, or that he believed he was, or the normal Leonard, I guess. And then he becomes this other identity, this person, this detective that's forever on this quest. So, I felt like there's some good similarities there. Nolan, the thing is that Nolan is like all of his films, he's truly a craftsman filmmaker. I mean, this man has really studied the masters, but he's taken those lessons and he's definitely gone farther, with it. And, the whole idea that, that his films, they inhabit this space of film, like the great film noirs, where there's this dreamlike quality to them, so that you're seeing the film and you're certain of the story and the plot until you're not. And then it becomes this kind of wonderful conscious questioning moment where you're like, you're thinking, okay, but is he playing this trick on me, or is this how I'm perceiving it? And he does this, he did it in Tenet and Inception. So it's always this question of like, is this the dream within the dream, or what is it that we're experiencing? And he really can't. And in this, like Nathan said, he really puts you in the headspace of that protagonist, to where you're just, you're starting to question, everything, from the beginning.
Yeah, and there's so much paranoia that is stemming from that, because as you're in this perpetual dance between there's this apprehension of what lies ahead and this entanglement of what's already behind us. So you're trapped in this like paradoxical web of like future worries and past burdens through this. So you feel like you're constantly pulled in this. And I never had a problem with the editing of this. I know, Sam, you mentioned that you were kind of like of dual minds in some ways, and I hear what you're talking about, but I love the black and white storyline that's going forward and the color that's going backwards, and I think it's perfectly balanced. And
I do think it's technically good. It's like having the mental condition, you know what I mean? And that's the point. Yeah. I don't have a problem with the editing. I just think it makes me detached from the story. So if he were to suddenly live or die, it makes me care less. But I acknowledge that I think this is a really good movie with a technical impressiveness.
I love it. The precision of it, because it's also just not just like running in parallel. It's coming to a head, everything
merge.
So it's
But I think like the skill that makes that balance is that it's paced really well. Like this movie just moves and it doesn't really drag. And I think the thing that maybe causes the detachment for Sam, but makes it maybe more, technically proficient about the condition is we're not really sympathetic towards it. And, earlier, Nathan, you were like, this puts us so much in the headspace. And I agree, of someone who has this condition, but it's like, it's very matter of fact about it, which I think is, for better or worse, a very Nolan quality, but I don't feel like it's mawing at all. I don't feel like it's weepy or sympathetic about the condition. This is what it is.
That's why I really, really liked the humor, because it alleviates it and brings attention to the fact that, like, if you're on board with this somehow, we're going to make sure you're having at least somewhat of a good time. And so
it's funny.
And they put those moments in, it's funny. Yeah.
Talking about sympathy, I think some of the sympathies are supposed to come about in the story of Sammy Jenkins as well, which I think we need to talk about, because that's a big part of this movie. Sammy Jenkins, played by Stephen Tobolowsky, somebody I actually have met one time before. Beautiful man, lovely guy. He's tall, 6'5" or something like that. Really tall.
No way.
He's a really nice guy. And
do you think he remembers that?
He does not remember. I have his autograph though from that meeting.
Stephen Tobolowsky had the most emotionally humorous line in the movie, where his finger gets pricked and he's like, "Oh, what the fuck? Test that with you fucking quack." I was like, yes.
Yeah. I think that is, we're in full spoiler territories here, by the way, now. So, but what I'm saying is, that is kind of the emotional heart of this, him and his wife as well. Mm-hmm. And that's all tied to the storyline that Leonard used to be like insurance adjuster. Mm-hmm. And there's this whole other timeline, the backstory that he is telling, which I just love how that's brilliantly weaved into this whole thing. And it's all as part of this phone conversation that Leonard is on as well in a motel room. But I don't know. I really loved it.
It's beautifully told, and another one that's just really beautifully acted. Just the performances really carry it.
It's interesting too that most of this movie is like medium close-up shots. Like we don't get a lot of wide established tracking shots. We get a few, but it's mostly told in kind of a medium, like almost like television framing, which is interesting because
there's a really great wide shot. It's actually when the whole time during those like flashback shots where Leonard's on the phone, he's telling the whole story about Sammy Jenkins, and the whole time he's like pulling on his like the tattoo sleeve, and when it finally it's revealed, like never answer the phone, there's this really haunting shot which is almost like surveillance camera shot, like in the upper corner of it, which is like this wide shot of the whole room, which is like the horror moment of this whole movie. It's like, which I really love.
I kind of want to go back and rewatch it.
I did like there were some decent wides at the abandoned tower, like desolate location. That was some decent cinematics.
Do you think that that framing sort of mimics a Polaroid a little bit? Now that you say it, I feel like I kind of see it.
Maybe it does. I think Christopher Nolan likes that. I noticed that framing a lot in Batman Begins, where it's like he's always kind of close on fights, and sometimes it works for me. Sometimes for some reason it's a totally different movie. But I thought his framing is at its best and incredible in Oppenheimer, because the canvas goes like that, the canvas opens really, really wide. Whereas for a lot of his earlier career, he's more kind of zeroed in on character moments. It's definitely a style, and television is the wrong. That's the wrong. It's above, like a television framing, obviously, but he's close and intimate. I like it in his later films when he backs up and paints this. He gets more like Cecil B. DeMille later on.
Yeah.
For me, Oppenheimer just like blows me away in terms of that. I mean,
Oppenheimer was awesome.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on a couple of points about that story with Sammy Jenkins, because I feel like that's the gateway to the heart of the crux of this film. I thought was very the irony of this is that Lenny there's the tattoo says remember Sammy Jenkins. The irony is because Lenny pretty much already remembers many of the details about Sammy Jenkins, but what this movie is about, and I think what the tattoo is really there for him, is a reminder to Lenny not to end up like Sammy Jenkins, to become a man without agency. And I think this is what the movie is really about. He's making these decisions so that he will continue on this mission to find his wife's killer. If he acknowledges the victory, then there's nothing left to live for. So to remember Sammy Jenkins is that reminder you must always have this agency in your life. And I think that's what is motivating him for this. So it's just another brilliant stroke, I think, for this film.
Do you think it was also like, do you think there was a shred of truth in what Teddy was saying at the end, where he was like, no, some of that Sammy Jenkins story was you, and you've like reimagined it. Like, remember Sammy Jenkins is like, remember that it's you, because that's the part. He only gets things tattooed that he forgets.
I don't know, anyone else can chime in on this, but I think so. I think that there's those little vignette snippets where you see
pinching the thigh,
all those things, which I love those shots of that. What's also really cool, and I don't mean to hijack this whole topic here, those moments of where you see those memories of his wife. I love those, because that's where these emotions of grief, I think, really come in. This movie, I think, is such a study of grief. All those moments, it's not your typical like moments where like they're laughing and they're having a good time, they're smiling, and that's kind of what you might think that he would remember. But all these memories are quite melancholy. And I really like that. And I think that's a really nice touch.
That's a really good point about the grief. Like, I think it does that really well. I also think it's a really good character study of Guy Pearce, because in the end, he chooses to give himself. He's like, well, I'm just going to make it like this. This is my quest. This is what I'm going to do. That's his character. Mm-hmm. Where I was thinking about myself watching that scene. If it was me with that condition, I would design everything to erase all memories, all trails. And I would create a totally fictional, I would take the money, move to some beach somewhere and create false memories that everything is just about, I'm living on a beach. Life is great. What I would do is try to avoid all pain. And it's interesting to me that he creates a quest for himself to go after the pain, which is,
He's going for like absolution. He's going for,
Sure. And you could do that live on the beach thing, but you also will need to avoid Adam Sandler. So,
I do think, talking about this in like relation to following a lot, I do think Lenny's marriage is sort of the prototype for Mal in Inception. I sort of think that like perfect dead wife and unreliable narrator.
Right.
We see that show up again later in Inception.
It's interesting because Inception deals with dreams and reality within a reality. You talk about an emotional connection. I love Inception infinitely more than this film. I like this film, but I like it on I think it's a good like technical magic trick, but I feel like Inception goes into like the depths of the human soul. And it also has these set pieces that like rival James Bond movies. So but that's just, again, I'm talking about myself as an emotional audience viewer.
Same. And I think like the takeaway there is Nolan's like telling the same, finding new ways or deeper ways to tell the same story. It's dealing with the same themes.
Anything else about Lenny's condition itself that I think is, again, this is apparently something that really exists. I've
Anterograde amnesia. And
all I know is that someone that wrote an article, they said that the movie did an incredibly accurate job of what the condition was like. Mm-hmm. And just a random shout out to like the art director or continuity people that worked on this movie. Like I was just felt exhaustion when it like showed all his notes and everything. I was like, oh my God, all those notes have to be thought out. They have to have the right notes. They have to know where I was like, oh my God, what a headache.
Yeah. So like I said, it is a real condition. I mean, so it would really be this way. It would be like after like a certain amount of time, you would just reset. I always picture, there's the analogy of like the Polaroid in reverse where it would just fade. So it wouldn't be like memories would fade. Like my joke before, like a goldfish, or perhaps that you only have like 15 minutes. Like I always picture like it would be like a rolling 15 minutes or so, but I guess it's not like that. It would just be like you reset. I think it's either an interview with Christopher Nolan or in the commentary, he mentions that it was designed so that it's not necessarily a science where it's every 15 minutes. It also is affected by the amount of stress that Lenny is under, how quickly he would reset as well.
That makes sense in the Carrie-Anne Moss in the car scene where he's like desperately searching for proof in her apartment. Because that I think is the fastest we see him reset.
Yeah.
When she looks at him through the car windshield and is just like, that gives me the chills, because like that taps into my greatest fear of like people being like manipulative and evil. And I'm like, see, it's proof. People are like that.
What a fascinating character though, huh?
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing. I was thinking of UB because like she was fascinating. I thought she was really interesting and not just like a Nolan, like female window dressing with his bad writing towards
perfect dead wife.
Something here. Right. Natalie, also, in some ways, is she a victim here as well? I mean, her boyfriend was just murdered, right? If I'm trying to put this in order, if we were to watch this in chronological order, I mean, her boyfriend was just murdered, and Teddy and Lenny were involved in this. Is she also out for revenge as well? So is she really the bad person here? I'm trying to also put this all in context. We are obviously on the protagonist side, Lenny's side here, because we're with him this whole movie. But I'm also trying to figure out, like, if we were watching this movie from Natalie's perspective, would this be a completely different? Would our sympathies would align with her in this?
It's possible. I also think it would. I mean, and I'm being kind of ridiculous, but it would be funny if the guy that worked at the hotel was like the mastermind behind everything, and he like that would be amazing. But to your point, maybe it's hard to. I mean, it's something I need to watch it again because all the plot things we're talking about, I followed it, but like it requires multiple viewings, which is brilliant because if you watch it multiple times, the movie makes more money. It's like
it does require, and I think there was like a missed opportunity there that maybe there could have been a tie-in with Tenet or even Inception. I mean, it's like if you because
the universe.
Well, because like if they stumble through one of those hotel rooms and then suddenly it's like there are three guys asleep, but they're all hooked into like the machine in Inception or something.
Right. Or they just walk into one hotel room and it's Eugene Levy's character from American Pie. He's like, whoa, Jimbo, whoa, you got a gun. I'm scared.
Oh my God.
I thought there could have been a tie into like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind would have been a more
I also agree
universe, perhaps.
That too.
Yeah, there's a lot of these.
I love Eternal Sunshine. That's a great movie.
I love that movie.
That gave me motion sickness in the theater because it was like the camera was always moving.
Yes.
Same with a movie called Open Water where you're just like bobbling up and down.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened to my mother, but really Eternal Sunshine, really good movie. I enjoyed it a lot more when I watched it on a smaller TV because the effect of the movement for some reason made me get motion sickness, and I never get motion sickness. Yeah, quality.
I often get motion sickness, but I thought that was a great movie. I also love Elijah Wood's character in that movie. We don't talk about that enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did anyone notice the Amazon escorts? Perhaps a failed extension of Jeff Bezos that just did not land well. I don't know. Talk about next way shipping. No. Nobody saw that?
I missed.
Right in the phone book. Amazon escorts. No. All right, I'll shut up now.
I missed that. But see, that's the kind of detail like that. That's
how many times have you seen this?
I've only seen this twice.
Times.
See, here's the thing, though. I know if I see
Amazon escorts.
I'll say this because even in spite of my review is generally positive. I'll say this: if I watched this movie a few more times, I believe I would like it more and more with each time because it's all there. Like it's incredibly well done. So like my review is positive. It's not a negative review. It's just how the movie makes me feel when I watch it.
That's all right. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happens to me all the time. Don't worry.
Same.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very worried. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Don't worry. Hakuna Matata.
That was a joke, but yeah. Anyway, it didn't land.
So a line from another older movie, two characters, also an old film about older times or older films. The phrase is, there's a word for people that think that everybody's out to get them. Yeah, perceptive. It's from Woody Allen's Curse of the Jade Scorpion, where he incidentally plays an insurance detective. So another detective tie in there. Not exactly film noir, but maybe film neurotic, not film noir. Film noir.
Quick humorous question: who would be the worst? What's the worst possible casting that you could pick for Guy Pearce's role? Like just someone who
Jim Carrey.
Pretty bad. Yeah, Jim Carrey would be pretty bad.
Martin Short.
Oh, yeah, that's worse. Yeah.
I would have to go with Arnold Schwarzenegger because I love him, but he'd be like, but I can't remember. I keep trying. Why am I at this hotel? What are you doing here?
This feels like a really good time to bring up who would you replace with Mark Wahlberg?
Oh man. Oh, definitely Joey Pants.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because
oh my God.
You're so stupid. He's like, your wife was already. You didn't know that? I've been following you around for a month. You fucking idiot. Like, where do you think you got the Chevrolet from? That's my car. I let you borrow it. You stupid fuck.
Perfect.
It would just be so over the top. I mean,
you would.
Like,
you'd be like, oh,
wait. Now I need a Wahlburger and some fries.
Exactly. Yeah. Always.
That's our agenda.
Let's see if we can just quickly summarize how this movie wraps up. It's a little confusing because the movie ends at the beginning, or the beginning at the end. I don't even know how to summarize it, but I just really like how, I don't know if anyone caught it, because it's almost, you can almost miss it. We go from black and white to color,
beautiful transition
in a moment that I don't think I've seen this movie 6 or 7 times. I never caught it. In the moment where we've gone from the one storyline to the other storyline, it's a beautiful moment, and I finally caught it for the first time when we go from black and white to color. Mm-hmm. It's when he's dragging, I think, Jimmy out into the light, and it's really cool. But I think it's a very tragic moment because you mentioned it before. Lenny is we find out, because I think Teddy mentions this, that you killed the real
James G.
The real James G. But we don't even know if that was really his wife's killer. We don't even know if his wife even was really killed or not. But anyways, this person was killed a long time ago, and there's even proof of it. There's a picture of him, and he's like, the only time we've ever seen him smile in the movie, and there's Polaroid, and he's like pointing out like his heart or something like that. And then he decides that this is he's not, he can't, well, I don't know how to really describe it. He can't accept this, because he knows that if he does accept this, he has no agency in his life, and he must continue this mission to avenge his wife, because I think, like I said before, he's scared that he cannot end up like Sammy Jenkins, a man without agency. I mean, that's my interpretation of it. But so he creates the narrative, the mystery all over again, creating the next John G, James G, Jimmy, whatever, which I think is just it's just a really sad, tragic moment. I mean, Lenny is such a tragic character, because of this. One of the most tragic characters I've seen in cinema. I mean, we haven't really even talked about the ramifications of somebody that cannot process time. I mean, that's insane. Here's a man who wakes up every day, or perhaps every 15 minutes or so, and comes to the realization.
But did you also? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That his wife was raped and murdered, and the main thing that helps us process grief and eventually move on is time. And Lenny has no concept of time. Every 15 minutes, he relives the worst emotional pain of his life. Yeah. So how does a person with this condition ever move on from tragedy? Right. And this is going to be his existence until the day he dies. And that makes him one of the most ultimate tragic characters I've ever seen in a movie.
That's an amazing point, and that now it makes me want to see the movie again, because I never thought about that. And you're right, Nathan. Like that, time. What's that quote? Time heals all wounds, or the past, and the whole entire journey of all of our lives. I mean, time is everything. What I've learned over time, who I was, where I'm going, where I've been. Time is what it's all about, and our perception of it. And to be robbed of that,
you can never grow.
That is the ultimate tragedy. And maybe this is good. Maybe on a deeper level, maybe that's why the movie is a tough watch for me, because I like, in general, starting somewhere, moving ahead, ending somewhere else, and feeling like I'm on a journey. And because the movie is about a character that struggles with the nature of time itself, you can't on a subconscious level, I think that's painful for me, because it's brilliant, but it's painful because I like to go from A to B to C. I like, and so when you're denied that,
it's gone from A to B to A.
It's brilliant, but it's like, it's like being in a spin dryer. You know what I mean? Like, so that's a fascinating point. Yeah.
And in any of these films, you feel like there's a the journey in some way, whether they ride off into the sunset or whether the character dies, you feel like there's there's some sort of completion. But with this, it's this haunting realization that somewhere in the multiverse, Leonard or Lenny is out there forever trying to kill John G.
Exactly.
And one thing that I noticed too is that so there was a moment, now whether it's a false memory or a real memory, he has a thing where his wife is they're in bed and she's reclined on his chest, and above his heart is the tattoo, "I did it."
Yeah.
But then what you find out, the reality is that there's a blank spot above his heart. He doesn't have that tattoo in reality. Or at least in reality, it's not there. The "I did it" tattoo is not there. It's only in his mind. It's only in a false memory, a dream. I don't know.
Exactly. And I just realized now that, like, with what I was saying earlier, where I would try to erase everything and just live a peaceful, like, forgetful existence. The problem with that, though, is that the memory of the dead wife would keep coming back. So my theory wouldn't work. I couldn't do that. Like, yeah. So there's no escape. Yeah.
I think it's interesting when we talk about the ending, it seems like everyone's taking Teddy at his word. That, like, I think we're so hungry for answers at the end of this movie that Teddy just, like, fits them all very neatly and seems to provide them. And I like that version. I like that ending where it's, Leonard's wife did survive the attack, did survive the break-in, but he killed her via insulin overdose. He is the Sammy Jenkins of his own story. Mm-hmm. And I think he, whatever story is true, he wakes up in this, like, loop of violence that he just sort of can't overcome. He's just stuck inside that loop, which I think is just really interesting. But it's this, this lack of closure. Like, he just can't get closure for it ever.
And I don't think he really wants closure.
I don't think it's the lie he tells himself. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
I forgot to mention too, in the end credits, there's a David Bowie song, and I actually read this fact, and I wish I'd written it down. But Christopher Nolan wanted a different song in the end credits, but it was too expensive to get the rights to, and so the David Bowie song was the second choice. I actually really liked the David Bowie song. I forgot what the other one was, but I got to remember that because those end credits has a real feeling to it that I actually liked, because if it started playing this somber classic music, there's something about that. It goes into this pop song that I kind of liked. It's like, you just watched Memento and you took a crazy ride, man. Like, I like that. I like how it's like you're getting off a roller coaster at the end and you're like, holy, what the hell was that? Like, I like that. Yeah.
So there's another little thing that I came across that I want to say that it's the gentleman played Sammy Jenkins, Stephen Tobolowsky.
Yeah.
So he said in an interview that he had actually also experienced amnesia after being given painkillers for an operation. Now it was temporary.
He broke his neck. Yeah.
Oh, was that what it was?
Oh my
wow.
God.
Okay. Jesus, that is
the only experience I've had with that, and where the drug actually does this, was when I had to get 4 wisdom teeth out at once. And so they gave you a drug that perpetually, like, erases your memory through the course of the day. Mm-hmm. And so I was in the car being driven there, and then I was just kind of like, dit. And I don't remember this, but they said that when I was on the operating table, they were taking the teeth out, that I was quoting the whole entire time Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek. They were like, okay, you're is. I was like, excellent. Proceed, number 1. Well done. You're great. You're the best commanding officer ever. And the whole time I was just like in Star Trek land. But like my memory just went out the window, but it wasn't a side effect. I can't remember the drug, but it literally it just turned the day into a series of images that I woke up later and I was like, ow. but during the experience, it was a blast. Like, I had fun. It was crazy.
I have never heard that. That sounds kind of awesome.
Yeah. And because I was conscious during the thing. It was like, obviously, it was numb, but I was awake and I have like bits and pieces. I could hear it, but I was completely detached, just like, woo, good times.
All right. Well, I think we can at a point where we can take a quick break before we come back and make our decisions on whether we save this film or purge it.
Wait, quick, Nathan. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, it's me, your good friend B. What would you do a double feature with this movie for? Because I'm going to watch it again.
Well, I was going to get to that after our quick break.
Oh, we didn't say it. Can we do it?
We want to do it now?
Yeah.
Well, then I want to save that for after our break. This is like a good time to do my house. Maybe then this is the halftime show.
There's a time and the place for everything. It'll come in good time. You're going to get there. You're on the way.
Fine.
And David, congratulations for not staying in the office. You went to the set. You're a producer. You're Mr. Winner. You're not Mr. Loser. I'm very proud of you.
We got to get to the chopper.
We got to get to the chopper now.
All right.
The chopper and Black Hawk Down.
Take a quick moment and thank you for dialing into our transmission. We'd love to get your feedback. And you can do that by sending us an email at backtotheframerate@gmail.com or finding us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, or TikTok with the handle Back to the Frame Rate, or through Twitter by finding us on Back Frame Rate. We have a monthly newsletter, Frame Rate Monthly, where you can see what films we're going to be reviewing in the future, which is helpful if you want to watch along with us and compare notes. We often have polls and other interesting content that we think you'll enjoy. Best way to sign up is to email us at backtotheframerate@gmail.com. And lastly, we're a humble podcast here, not really able to throw money around for advertising and marketing. And as you know, we're trying to grow organically, but a wonderful way you can help us is by rating and reviewing our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our show. So please spread the word, tell your friends, family, colleagues, share share the episodes on your social media feeds. It's an incredible boost to helping our show grow. We thank you in advance. Okay, so now B.
Hey.
We can do our movie pairings.
Finally.
And you know what? You can go first.
Finally.
This is the part of the show where we envision like a double feature night, David. Mm-hmm. So if you we're watching Memento, what would you recommend watching it with, as a complimentary film? B, you can go first.
Sure. David, you brought up some great parallels to older films when talking about this, and it did make me think of Ava Gardner in The Killers.
Yeah,
that's another. I think if you like her in that, you like that, or even Amy Dunn in Gone Girl, right? Mm-hmm. That's a great character that reminded me of this. But I think if you really like Memento, a great double feature is 2010 Shutter Island.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. See, obvious pairing. I don't want to spoil it if folks haven't seen it because it is, it's pretty twisty. But if you like film noir, if you like unreliable narrators, if you like memory as a concept and struggling with mental health as a concept, then I think this is the movie for you. Mm-hmm. And you can rent it. Unfortunately, you can't stream it for free anywhere, but it's worth a few bucks, I think.
It's a very good film. Yeah.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, what's your movie pairing for?
So my movie pairing, and I would say it's a kind of distant comparable, but I would not watch the two of them in the same night because then you'd be up till like 6 o'clock in the morning. But I'm going to go with a Hateful Eight because even though it's not entirely an unreliable narrator story, it's one of those movies where you meet characters, you don't know their motivations are or what they're doing until it shows who they are much later on. Kind of what's the word? People are divided on this movie. I really like it, but man, do you have to be in the mood to watch that movie because it is talking and talking and talking. And I think the cinematography, the blizzard, like I'm actually a big fan of the film. So it's a stretch. When I went online, Google, and was looking at comparables to Memento, a lot of these films are films I haven't seen. And we'd already discussed Gone Girl. And so this was kind of the closest thing that I could find with just nothing is what it seems type film. So very thin, but big fan of the movie. If you haven't seen it, beautiful movie to look at. Just gorgeous.
It's a cool pull.
I remember this I saw this. This is not one of my favorite Tarantino films. I remember there was such a backlash. Like, why was this shot in like 70 millimeter, and then the whole thing's inside of a room.
It is kind of funny because it's like
But then everyone went crazy over at Oppenheimer and IMAX, which is just people talking in a room, and people have said that's brilliant.
It is. Someone said they felt like they'd been like, like hoodwinked, or like they'd been joked, because like Quentin Tarantino's like 70 millimeter, and then the whole time you're like hanging out inside like a haberdashery, just people sitting around, and it's like Kurt Russell like.
It's a fun movie though. It also weirdly would have worked for our Snowy Survival series.
It could have.
Yeah. I just it's one of those movies where it's definitely not Quentin Tarantino's best, but it's that if you're in the movie, you just sit there and hang out with these people and watch this like brutal evening unfold. It's a lot of fun.
It is brutal.
It's brutal, yeah. My movie pairing to accompany Memento is the 1998 film from director Tom, I guess it's Tykwer. I don't know, it's Tykwer, because he's maybe German. It's Run Lola Run.
Great movie.
Yeah, everyone seen this?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have not seen it.
It's
great.
Good movie.
Gotta check it out.
I selected this movie because it too was an independent film from a relatively unknown director at the time that would eventually go on to a larger career, not quite as big as Nolan's. Run Lola Run, I can kind of describe as Groundhog Day, but as a German crime thriller is how it's It is also heavily steeped in the use of non-linear timelines. The plot revolves around a woman, Lola, played by I think Franca Potenta. I guess that's how you say her name.
That could be right. I don't know.
Some may remember her as Marie from the first couple of Bourne films.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've seen her in anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Those are films that gave me motion sickness.
In the film, Lola is trying to recover money that belongs to a local gang. And the story structure, like I said, without spoiling, any of the film details, because some people may have not seen it out there, is something that could remind you of, like I said before, Groundhog Day, or even more like Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise film.
That's a great
It's
love
a high,
that movie.
it's a high energy film that has a lot of action. It's got a really cool soundtrack. Actually, the soundtrack might even be more popular than the film. I had the CD at one point. I've lost it since, but back in the day, it's just an amazing slice of high voltage techno. The whole movie, in many ways, is an 80-minute music video. So yeah, it's a short film. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Around the same length as an average episode of an HBO show, so you have no excuse. So you can catch Run Lola Run on VOD. So yeah, check it out.
It's a great call.
Yeah,
good call. Mm-hmm.
David, do you have something for us?
Well, and I actually I probably spoilered or previewed this earlier, but Angel Heart, Alan Parker, 1987, in which Mickey Rourke plays a detective hired by an enigmatic, and I'm struggling not to, but 1987 to spoil anything, but he's hired by a really enigmatic, strange figure played by Robert De Niro to track someone down, and as we move along, and it is, even though the storyline is linear, we jump. There are jumps back into time because you're going into like the faulty narrator, faulty memory, kind of trope. So so there's that, and there's a heavy supernatural or occult element to it, and it takes place in one of my favorite cities, New Orleans. So you get to see a lot of New Orleans, Alan Parker, but. Again, it plays with this motif of of identity and loss of identity, and are we who we think we are, or are we who we are because we are who we think we are? Anyway, yeah, there's a mental pretzel for our listeners. Enjoy, extra salty. So there's that, and then if I had to pick one from just like noir. Because you should, with a strong femme fatale, Double Indemnity from Billy Wilder from 1944, and Barbara Stanwyck, because we were talking about the scenes with Carrie-Anne Moss, as the Natalie character in Double Indemnity. There's several scenes, but there's one in particular where Stanwyck, her character, doesn't have any dialogue, but there's this character change that's just written across her face. And it goes from like this mild expression to like this one where you feel like incredible strength and resolve, but incredible menace. And it sounds strange to say this, but when you're watching the film, if you're really watching it, it happens, and you're just like, I was struck by, oh my Lord, this woman did this. It's lighting and cinematography, but also acting, and there's largely no special effects, but you get the very sense that this is a Black Widow. This is this femme fatale character that is like, she's like spring steel inside with like sharp knives, and she comes across as like this velvet character, but by the end of the film, she's got these people, she's got people murdering each other, so yeah. Anyway,
I think she's the femme fatale.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Angel Heart, Double Indemnity.
You've made a triple feature. You cheated, but we'll let it go. We'll let it go. You're the guest. All right, now the moment that everyone's been waiting for.
How come no one mentioned Jingle All the Way? I mean,
don't know. We're gonna get to our verdict. By the way, any final thoughts on Memento? And before we get to our verdict, or I think we've said everything there is to say about Memento.
I have a final thought. Oh wait, I can't remember. And I'm fired. I'll see you later.
I was about to say.
Honestly, I don't think we did that enough.
This is the part where you tell us if Memento is going to be saved for future generations after the impending asteroid apocalypse, so the future generations can enjoy this film for the next generation, or do we lose it forever?
Dun, dun, dun. If it's up to me, save it. Yeah.
By the way, it's a majority. It's a majority. If we don't get 3 out of 4 votes, it gets lost forever.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, count me in for one.
All right, Sam.
I would
Purge.
I would save it, even if it's not my favorite film. I think it's worthy to watch and be revisited. So I would definitely save it.
This is absolutely hell yeah. We saved this movie. This is one of the most unique and greatest movies we've had ever made. So yes, 100%.
David, what would you have voted?
It must be preserved, and even if we have to destroy all of the works of Pauly Shore in order to save the space for that, then I'm okay with that.
Even Encino Man.
Yeah, I would have to let that go. I would shed maybe half a tear, and
is
then
it true that Pauly Shore is going to do the Richard Simmons biopic?
Oh wow.
It's
everything you just said.
Voices cried out, and an entire plane. No, I'm sorry.
Oh God.
I'd just be happy as long as 1979's The Muppet Movie makes the list. Then I'm happy to save everything else, because that's imperative.
Let's officially save Memento.
Let's save Memento. Yes. Nice. That's the vault door.
That's the vault door.
The vault
locked
door.
away.
Okay.
We sealed ourselves in.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's only one bathroom though. We gotta,
It's really gonna suck for me. I can't.
Oh boy. Okay. No soft cheeses, Nathan. No soft cheeses. We just emphasize that.
That's what my wife says.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This film really is almost as good as Bicentennial Man. I mean, it's just, it's
give it another 20 years,
Yeah.
Make it there. All right. Before we close it out, I just, maybe no one else has any interest in this, but B, you and I just wanted to hobnob for like a minute or two, because we both watched Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and you have maybe 30-second thought on this, as do I.
Yeah, that's about all I have on this. Pretty good. Better than Afterlife, I thought. I was glad that it was just I feel like they just got to shake out the rust, and then we finally get a straight down the middle sequel. And that's all we ever wanted.
Where would you rank this in the oeuvre of Ghostbuster movies?
Oh God, like Ghostbusters, then I guess Frozen Empire, then Afterlife than the 2010 or whatever it was, 2016.
2016, yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Anyone else seen it, or
I haven't seen it. I will say really, really briefly, I watched a movie 2 nights ago that it's a famous classic film that I actually had never seen before. And in spite of its incredibly being on the wrong side of history and just really like cringe-inducingly racist from the late 1930s, in terms of filmmaking, a masterpiece. I saw Gone with the Wind for the first time, and I was blown away by the film.
Is that like a pun, a joke in there too?
No. I was like, it was one of, it is like a 4-hour, it's like the grandfather of like epic films. And the good news is, some modern films, if you watch things on Disney Plus, some things come with a warning that sometimes can be ridiculous. Where like Goonies, it's like, oh, there's depictions of tobacco in this movie. And you're like, come on. This film, though, it opens with an African-American scholar. And this is the most appropriate warning label on this film because the whole movie has this rosy view of the South. It's based off a book. And so that is problematic, but like, Steven Spielberg, I mean, lots of directors like love this film, like Vivien Leigh, Clark Gable, judging it just as a movie by itself, fully aware of the problems. My God, it was incredible. Just so one of the hugest, most gargantuan films I've ever seen in my life. Just enormous.
That's great. I have seen it a long time ago. I can't wait for your review of Birth of a Nation next week, Sam.
Oh God, no. I'm not going to be watching that one.
I do just want to follow up on B because I also did see Ghostbusters as well. I did enjoy it. I liked it more than Afterlife.
Yeah.
But I thought it was decent. Not great. I thought it was funnier than Afterlife, and I think that's why it was better. Yeah. And I think this is the only thing I will say. Then we'll drop Ghostbusters until who knows whenever. I think that they need to officially retire the old cast.
Yeah,
I think they are hanging on. Aykroyd, Bill Murray, I do not feel like they want to be in these movies.
Yeah. I don't, and I'm not coming from Ghostbusters. Like, I don't think it's a revered text. I didn't grow up or love the original. So this one comes out, I'm like, yeah, it's better. Afterlife was technically a movie. So this beats that. I
think Paul Rudd and Carrie Coons are wonderful together. I think the young cast, I'm sorry, totally blanking on the young actress's name that is really the star of this movie. I hope that this movie gets a third film in the franchise. It tanked in its second week at the box office. It went down like 65%. And unfortunately, we got Godzilla versus Kong Empire, some dumb shit happening, which made like $80 million this weekend, which buried everything else. Busters, Frozen Empire. We have 2 movies with a subheading of Empire, which is weird. Did terrible in its second weekend, and it's unfortunate because this movie cost $100 million, $25 million more than Afterlife did, and I think it's really trying to recapture that mid-'80s like Amblin type of feel, that we had back then. But it's trying to live in 2 worlds. It's trying to have that Bill Murray, Aykroyd kind of old guard comedy, but it doesn't want to fully embrace the new cast all the way. And I think Paul Rudd's great in this. I think Carrie Coon's great, and the kids are great in it. And I just want them to like fully embrace the new regime. And if they can do that and do the movie for half the cost because they don't have to pay these old guys, I think they could do something. And I'm really worried that they're going to run this franchise into the ground because they're not doing it.
So what you're saying, Nathan, is they really need to give up the ghost.
So, anyways, that's all.
Bustin' made me feel fine.
Yeah. One last thing.
I want to see it. I want to see it after B's endorsement. I want to see it because I've seen all the other ones, and I was actually a big fan. But like Nathan, I was like, with the one, I'm trying to remember, I can't remember the title of the one with all the female cast.
Just Ghostbusters.
Okay. So the Ghostbusters, and then, and then Aykroyd is in it. And then like you, I was like, he really doesn't want to be here. He's really it's like, he's like, what, it's almost like you can feel him seething in the scene. Like, I've really got a big paycheck, so I need to get through this stupid scene for this film, which, and people treating the original movie with all this reverence. But, I was a kid when it came out. It was a summer popcorn movie. It was a fun popcorn movie with a pop song, and you went to see it, and it was like, yeah, it was fun, and you enjoyed it. But it wasn't this sacred thing, And I think the young actor you're thinking of is probably Finn Wolfhard. The guy,
the other one.
That's the older. That's the younger. The girl.
I haven't seen it yet, but I feel like Dan Aykroyd is like in interviews. Dan Aykroyd is like so enthusiastic. I feel like he like really wanted to do it, but maybe
Aykroyd, yes. Bill Murray, no.
Yeah.
God, no.
Yeah.
Any Wizard of Oz fans here? I was on a 1939 kick this week. Both directed by Victor Fleming, multiple directors. Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, 2 1939 films. Going back to old school days.
I love Wizard of Oz, yeah.
Wizard of Oz would be in my top 10. I watched it and I almost teared up because it's so good. And it does not have a wink like self, like, hey, look how it's so like wholeheartedly, it just goes for it, man.
Right. In the best way possible, Wizard of Oz has real theater kid energy.
Yes.
Definitely. And I have a friend who's actually, they did a live stage production version here in Memphis a couple months back, and a friend of mine played the wizard. So me and a bunch of friends went to see it. It was pretty cool. And I had an older friend that we brought it up, Wizard of Oz, and then he said, you realize that's one of the first science fiction movies. And I was like, what? He's like, think about it for even a minute and you'll realize it's science fiction.
It's James Cameron's favorite film, actually. He's said that.
Is
it's
it
his
really?
favorite movie, yeah.
It's had a bizarre, because like if you look at David Lynch, David Lynch's stuff, has got stuff that calls back to, Wizard of Oz and Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and a bunch of films have these little like, Easter eggy things, that harken back to that film.
It's real Shakespearean in the way that it's just a classic story.
Sure.
Like that,
Sure it is.
Fish out of water.
Shift gears quickly. Does anyone have any plans for the solar eclipse? This episode is going to drop on April 8th, the same day as the solar eclipse. How about that? Anyone have any plans?
I do, actually. On either Thursday or Friday, I'm in LA right now. I'll be driving to Texas, Austin, Texas. Gonna check it out. I'm giving myself maybe a day or so extra to get there because I'm just assuming there's going to be cloudy weather. So I want to have enough time that when I arrive, that I'll have enough time to get to sunny weather, however far I need to go. I have some friends in Austin, so maybe I'll meet up with them. But got my plans. Really, really looking forward to it. Got my Subaru Outback all passed its inspection and checked, and tire pressure is good and everything's good. So come Thursday or Friday morning at the latest, I'm on my way to Texas.
You're traveling, what, about 1,300 miles or 1,200 miles?
1,300, yep. It's almost exactly, yeah.
Wow.
Which for me, I love driving, so it's just like, hey, I would have been in Rhode Island, but it's actually logistically easier for me to go to Texas than it is to go back to Rhode Island and then go for a bunch of reasons, because I'm going there later on in the summer, too much back and forth. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick to my vehicle and go the Texas route this time.
David, this doesn't go far from where you are, right? You're going to be already like 90% coverage, right?
We're going to be in an area where we'd be able to see a lot of the coverage. And if we want to see be in the totality, we'd probably have to drive an hour east, I believe, into Arkansas. And so I would say that it kind of depends, because we actually in 2017, went to an area of totality in Kentucky and experienced it. And it is, if you've never experienced it, let me tell you, it's really eerie. I mean, it is one of these like eerie things. And you think, like we were talking about the other day, and I was thinking just objectively, like, well, big deal. I mean, it's like this one disc in front of another disc, and it's just this thing, and it's just a a trick with passing in front. And so what's the big deal? But then you get out there, and then, we were out in the countryside, and then in that moment of totality, like all the animal sounds and all the nature sounds really just kind of stop or drop near nothing. And it was really very, very strange. I mean, you actually, it sounds strange to tell you this years later, but there was like a feeling, a momentary feeling where you literally feel this like this eerie momentary stop of time.
Yes, there's almost like there's like a feeling of like air pressure changing or something. Like 2017, I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was just like, it was one of those all stop moments where it's going to be okay, but everything feels so weird, and your body goes, wait, what the hell should I run? Like, what's happening here? Like, right. And this one is going to be more totality than the 2017 one. The good news is that, if you guys in New England, even if you don't go anywhere, Rhode Island is still 90% Massachusetts. So it's like, it's going to be, I am so excited. Oh my God.
Our family is planning, we're driving northwest toward the northwest corner of Vermont.
Oh, that's awesome.
Not all the way to like Burlington area, but probably like Stowe, Waterbury area, because Burlington's going to be a disaster. We're not the traffic and all that. That's the one thing I'm worried about is the people from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, taking all those little highways up into Vermont. So, because it will be bad. It's not until like 3:30 in the afternoon over where we are.
Does anybody here know the story about, it was one of the conquistadors that used the knowledge of an eclipse with the Aztecs or the Incas, and he was able to tell them, I think it was a thing of, he was actually able to use it and say, like, oh, I have great power, I can make the sun go away. And then, of course, do you know this?
I think that was badly written expository dialogue mentioned briefly by writer David Keop in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but that's the extent of my knowledge of it. Yeah.
Then don't tell me any more about Indy.
You don't have to worry about the fourth film. It sucks.
Fair enough that I would mistake something by David Keop as actual history. So you got me there, but I do believe.
I think you're actually, it is actual real history. What I'm saying is David Keop imitated it. Like, I'm saying that my knowledge only comes from the film, but what you're saying is it's the film borrowed from research, because George Lucas is like, oh, I got to research it. Oh, I got to research,
But that's very valid. I feel like there's probably going to be several political rallies, and at one of them there's going to be somebody, probably a guy with with cotton candy hair, and then he's probably going to get a bunch more monies for his Bibles or his golden sneakers. But then maybe on the other side of it, there'll be a guy standing next to Joe Biden, making an eloquent speech about humanity and democracy, and then boom, everything will go dark, and we go like, oh, holy crap, we got to change our votes. No, okay, that's enough. I'm sorry.
That's why I'm giving myself extra time driving, because I'm a little nervous about what I'm going to do. Plus, I'm going through like twister territory in the spring. So it's like, if I see a tornado, I'm going to chase it, because if you feel it, chase it. Twisters, July 2024. If you feel it, chase it.
Face your fears.
I love that movie's already a classic in my mind, and I've never seen it. And like, if it sucks, like, man, am I gonna eat those words?
I think I might love it even more if it sucks.
And be careful while you're traveling through parts of Texas, Sam. If you get those roadblocks where they ask you, where you're from, you say, well, I'm American. They might ask you, what kind of American are you?
Jesse Plemons is going to be on the road. He's going to be like, what part? I'll be like, California. Jesse, like, wrong answer, buddy.
Wrong answer. Yeah. It's a great fear. Right. Jesse Plemons with an assault rifle. Yeah.
Oh man, that's scary.
That's truly going to be the film to see. Yeah. Are we all going to go see that? Is everybody?
Yeah, I am. I'm scared though. I'm so close to I don't want to go to the theater and like have fights break out. I'm going to watch it in the back and just run out the door when it's over.
I used to work in political campaigns, so it will be painful, but
it's scary. I'm afraid.
You should go watch it in Texas.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's what I'm going to do. I didn't think of that. That's awesome.
Bring a gun.
Hey, I don't have one, but yeah.
No, Nathan, bring. They'll hand him one when he walks into the theater. It's Texas.
Oh, we've just eliminated our entire Texas audience.
Probably.
I'm just gonna bring like chewing tobacco and be like, the Earth is flat. Fuck you. No, just kidding.
We sound like real coastal elitists, right?
Yeah, we are.
We do.
We have just eliminated what percentage of our audience?
I'll bring them back, guys. You have Houston spaces and much technology. We love you. Texas is amazing.
Love you, Texas birthed Beyonce, so it's got something.
And look, and just because you marry your cousins, I have no problem with that.
Stop it.
Yeah, it's not West Virginia.
Stop it. I love El
Paso. I retract my comments. I'm joking.
I love El Paso.
El Paso.
I love the Joan Crawford movie.
Let's wrap this up before anything else. But
I know we piss off more audience members.
I want to say, so David, thank you for joining us tonight. I want to give you a chance to mention anything that you want to say before you go, plug anything. Where can people find you, please?
Well, I'm like most of the kids, I'm on Facebook because you have to, and I can feel the eye roll of millennials and Gen Zers, but hey, it's there, it's a stable platform, whatever. So I'm there. Right now, I think there's probably a picture of me at a birthday some time ago where I'm wearing a dinner jacket and I'm toasting it with a martini glass because it was a Casablanca birthday party, because that's another film that I love. And so so you could find me on that. I am on LinkedIn, but I never check it, except now I guess I will have to, and I will probably also have to now update it because I've mentioned it here. But other than that, all social media is evil except for when it's not, and it can be useful at times. This was a lot of fun. I just say that this is really great. Nathan knows that I'm a cinematic cinephile from way back. So I love doing this. I love talking about film.
I'll find you on Facebook, and I love Casablanca is incredible. I love that movie.
Please. Yeah. It was like we rented an old school bar in downtown Memphis that already kind of looked like the set. And then we kind of decked it out with Moroccan lights and then asked everybody to dress up in 40s gear. And it turned out pretty well. Best
Casablanca joke. It's so stupid, but Naked Gun 2.5, Leslie Nielsen is like, Sam, play our favorite song. And he goes, okay. Ding dong, the witch is dead. That's amazing. Yeah.
David, and that reminds me, I totally forgot this memory. We also saw Casablanca at a theater in downtown Memphis when I visited you.
Did we? Yeah, when you came, the Orpheum. Yes. Oh, I forgot about that too. Yeah. What Nathan is talking about is there's an old school, huge theater. It's both like live performance and movie theater, and they do a summer film series. And as a part of that, they show Casablanca.
Cool.
Yeah,
I love it.
Cool. It was so cool.
Casablanca is one of those classic movies that you watch it and you're like, "Yep, I get it. Classic for a reason."
I'm going to watch it. I'm on a 1930s, 40s kick right now, so I'm just going back to the day. Yeah.
Sam, you should watch some of the David Lean movies I've been watching.
Oh yeah,
I've seen. Awesome. I got to see more of them. Lawrence of Arabia would be in my top 10, hands down.
Yeah, fantastic his film. Brief Encounter. No idea.
You guys are talking my language. This is awesome.
All right. Yeah. We can talk more offline, but let's wrap up the show. Next week, we are into our third film in our Nolan Nostalgia series. We're going to watch 2002's Insomnia. I have not seen that since, actually, you and me, David, saw that in the theater back in 2002. A movie that made me feel tired and cold, but I am really excited to revisit it because at the time, I remember I was kind of like nonplussed by it. I was like, this is okay. This is the same guy that did Memento. I was like, this is kind of very conventional, but I am really excited to revisit this for the first time in a long time. By the way, I think, B, you've seen this or not?
Nope.
Okay, so the rest of us have seen this. I know that. Has anyone here seen the original Swedish version of this, starring Stellan Skarsgård?
I have not.
I'm not saying we have to do this, but I would say if anyone has the time in the next week, and I'm asking the audience as well, it is totally worth your time to watch the 1997 original Swedish version. I forget the director's name offhand, and I'm sure I think it might be on Criterion or Movie or something like that. It's out there, but it's from 1997, also called Insomnia. Stellan Skarsgård is the lead in it. It's very good. I actually liked it more at the time, but you could watch it, and if anyone else wants to watch it, and we could maybe talk briefly about how these movies compare, I'm game for that as well. But we don't have to do that, but just throwing it out there.
And Nathan, you were right. It's Criterion and Tubi it's on.
Okay, great.
Okay.
By the way, I'll say this podcast is exactly 1 hour and 53 minutes. No joke. Memento is 1 hour and 53 minutes. So it was meant to be. That is true.
That's only helpful if we can end this now.
Adios, muchachos.
Stop the insanity.
Let's end it now. Thank you. I have to do my outro. So we're going to go over.
I want to discuss refinancing my mortgage. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. That's the show.
If you
this
or a
week.
loved one has mesothelioma.
Back to the Frame Rate is part of the Westy Media Podcast Network. We wish to thank Brian Ellsworth for our show opening. On behalf of all of us, we bid you farewell from the Fallout Shelter. Your presence in our underground sanctuary is truly appreciated. We are truly sorry you could not join us, but we want to express our gratitude for your company. If you are finding solace in our discussions, we kindly ask that you please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Your support is the beacon of light that brightens our confined space. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, or whichever portal connects you to our broadcast, and share your thoughts. Until we emerge from the fallout, stay with us, keep hope alive, and keep those reviews coming. This is the end of our transmission. Back to the Frame Rate. Signing off.
I want you to know it's over.